All right, so anyone listening to this is obviously serious about upping their English game, and we are too. So we're doing a deep dive today into this podcast episode. It's called How to Improve Your English, 15 Proven Tips. And
Interesting title.
it is catchy. It covers pretty much everything you can think of: speaking, thinking, reading, writing, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they really do try to be comprehensive.
Yeah, and we're here to pull out like the absolute best stuff, the most useful advice, and then add our own thoughts on top of that to help you guys actually, take your English to that next level.
I think one of the coolest things about this episode is that it really emphasizes this idea of living the language, not just studying it.
Okay.
So it's about making English a part of your everyday life.
Yeah, I've heard that before, but it's always kind of like, yeah, okay, but how,
Exactly.
like, how do you actually do that?
So this episode starts out strong with tip number 1, which is think in English.
Okay, that's a good one, but isn't that kind of a chicken and egg problem?
Yeah.
If you're not already fluent, how can you think in English?
Right. And the episode acknowledges that it's not,
Yeah,
necessarily easy, especially if you're used to translating everything in your head.
right.
But they give you this really practical advice. They say start small.
Okay.
So instead of translating everything, try describing what you see around you in English. Like just simple sentences.
Okay.
Imagine narrating your morning routine as you're getting ready.
Got it.
You're training your brain to think directly in English, even if it's just basic stuff at first.
Okay, so that's a good starting point, but it's just one tiny piece of the puzzle, right?
Right.
What about this whole surround yourself with English thing?
Yes.
Because, I can't just pick up and move to London or New York.
Yeah, you don't have to. It's more about creating those little English moments within your existing routine.
Okay.
So they give some good examples, like switching your phone settings to English.
Yeah.
That's a super easy one.
That's a good one?
Or start watching shows and videos in English, even if it's with subtitles at first.
Okay.
The idea is that you're passively absorbing the sounds and patterns of the language, even if you're not actively studying.
So it's like you're creating this little mini English-speaking world around you.
Exactly.
But then isn't there a risk that you'll get overwhelmed? Like if you're constantly bombarded with English, won't you just kind of tune it out?
That's where the strategy comes in. You have to choose content that you genuinely enjoy.
Oh, okay.
So if you're a comedy fan, watch sitcoms in English. If you love the news, switch to English news channels.
Yeah, makes sense.
They even specifically recommend shows like Friends or The Office because they use that everyday conversational English that's easy to follow.
Right, so it's targeted immersion.
Exactly.
All right, that makes a lot of sense, actually. What about reading, though?
Yeah.
Because this episode, they really emphasize reading every day, but let's face it, not everybody loves to read.
True. And the episode actually acknowledges that it's not just about, reading classic literature. They suggest starting with material that matches your current level. So if you're a beginner, maybe try children's books or graded readers.
Okay.
If you're intermediate, you could tackle news articles or blog posts. Find something that interests you.
So it's about finding something that sparks your interest regardless of your level.
Exactly.
And they also had this really good tip about using new words actively.
Oh, yeah.
So don't just memorize them. Try to actually work them into your writing or your conversations.
That's such a good point.
Yeah, and they gave this great example, like instead of just memorizing improve as make better, you would write something like, I want to improve my English by practicing every day. You're seeing the word in action in context.
It makes such a difference.
It really does. Okay, so we've got thinking, we've got surrounding yourself, we've got reading. What about actually speaking, though?
Yeah.
Because I think for a lot of people, that's where they hit a wall. This fear of making mistakes, sounding silly, or, just freezing up.
The episode actually addresses that fear head on. They emphasize that mistakes are inevitable, and more importantly, they're valuable.
Right.
You learn more from your mistakes than from getting everything perfect.
That's true.
So it's all about shifting your mindset from fear to seeing mistakes as stepping stones.
But that's way easier said than done.
It is.
Any practical tips on how to actually get over that speaking hurdle?
Yeah, they have a couple. They say you can start by talking to yourself in English. Just describe your day, your thoughts, whatever comes to mind.
Out loud.
Yeah, out loud. Another thing is to record yourself speaking and then listen back to it.
Oh, that's a good one.
It helps you identify areas where you can improve. And then they also say don't underestimate the power of language exchange apps.
Oh, yeah.
You can connect with other learners and practice in a safe environment.
It's true, and some of those apps are really good now.
They are.
So we're talking about real practical steps here, but what about the tech side of things in general?
Yeah.
Because there are so many language learning apps out there.
There are.
Does this episode recommend any specific ones?
They do. They mention some popular ones like Duolingo, Babbel, Memrise.
Those are all good.
Especially for vocab and grammar.
Yeah.
But they make this really important point. They say, don't fall into the trap of just passively memorizing words.
Right.
The real magic happens when you use those words actively in writing or in conversation.
Make them yours.
Exactly. You got to own them.
Yeah.
So it's not about the app itself. It's about how you use it.
Right. Tool for the job kind of thing.
Exactly.
Speaking of making things stick, they talk about keeping a vocabulary journal.
Yes.
What's their take on that?
They're big advocates for going beyond just writing down a word and its definition.
Okay.
So instead of just saying happy means joyful,
Right.
they encourage you to write full sentences using the new word, just like we talked about with the word improve.
Oh, I see. So it's all about seeing the word in action and how it fits into different situations.
Precisely. And they actually give this great example. They compare a poorly written entry to a well-written one. And it's amazing how much of a difference that full sentence makes.
So they give you like a bad example and a good example.
Yeah, it really highlights the importance of context.
Okay, but doesn't that take a lot of time?
It is an investment, but the payoff is huge.
Right.
And they emphasize reviewing your journal regularly, actively, using those words in your daily life so it becomes this living record of your progress.
Okay. I like that, a living record.
Yeah.
So we've got thinking surrounding yourself, reading, speaking tech journals. What else is in this treasure trove of English learning wisdom?
Well, they go back to one of the biggest anxieties for language learners, which is the fear of making mistakes.
Okay.
It's such a common roadblock that they actually circle back to this point later on.
So they talk about it more than once?
They do, because it's that important.
Okay, so it's not just a quick mention, it's like a recurring theme.
Yeah, they really want to drive this point home.
Okay, so what do they say about it this second time around?
This time they go a bit deeper. They point out that even native English speakers make mistakes.
We do.
All the time. It's just part of using language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not about being perfect. It's about being comfortable enough to communicate.
That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't thought about it like that before.
Yeah, it's a real mindset shift.
So instead of beating yourself up over every little slip up, you should just embrace the fact that mistakes are a natural part of learning.
Exactly. The key is to see them as opportunities to learn and grow.
Okay, I like that. But realistically, how do you change that mindset?
Well, they suggest finding an English-speaking group, either online or in person.
Oh, okay.
So it could be a Facebook group, a local meetup, even an online platform like Clubhouse or Discord.
Right.
It's a chance to immerse yourself in real conversations and just get comfortable with the flow of spoken English.
So you're kind of forcing yourself to get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
And a safe environment.
In a safe environment. Yeah, that's a good distinction to make.
Right. It's about finding your tribe of fellow English enthusiasts.
I like that. Okay, so finding the right group is important, but let's be honest. Putting yourself out there can be scary, even in a supportive environment.
And that's where their emphasis on having fun comes in.
Oh,
They
yeah.
suggest choosing activities that you actually enjoy.
Okay.
So if you love movies, watch movies in English. If you like music, listen to English music. Join a book club if you're a bookworm, you know.
So you're basically making English a part of the things you already love to do.
Exactly. The more you enjoy the process, the less daunting it feels.
Okay, so we're adding enjoyment into the equation. But what about those times when you're feeling stuck?
Yeah.
Like you're hitting a plateau and you're not making any progress?
They have a solution for that too.
Podcasts.
Podcasts.
Yes. They highlight how listening to podcasts can help you train your ear for natural conversations and different accents.
Yeah.
They recommend some good ones too, like The English We Speak from the BBC All Ears English, the American English Podcast.
Those are great.
Yeah. And you can listen during your commute, while you're working out, even while you're doing chores. It's true. It's like sneaking in some extra practice without even realizing it.
Exactly.
I love that. And for those who want to go like a step further and really work on their pronunciation, they introduce this technique called shadowing.
Shadowing, yes. Have you ever tried it?
I have heard of it, but I'm not sure I fully understand it. What exactly is it?
So shadowing is basically listening to an audio clip and then immediately repeating it.
Okay.
You try to mimic the speaker's intonation, their rhythm, their pronunciation as closely as possible.
Wow, so it's like you're becoming their vocal doppelganger.
Exactly. You're shadowing their every word.
Okay, that sounds intense, but I can see how it would be helpful for improving pronunciation and fluency.
Definitely. The episode breaks it down step by step. They say choose a short audio clip, something interesting, listen carefully, And pay attention to the nuances of the speaker's delivery, and then pause after each phrase or sentence and repeat it out loud, trying to match their intonation and pronunciation as closely as possible.
Okay, so it's like a pronunciation workout. You're training your tongue and your ears to work together.
Precisely.
But isn't it a bit awkward to be talking to yourself like that?
It might feel strange at first, but the key is to focus on the sounds, not on how you look or sound. The more you practice, the more natural it will become.
So it's like anything else, practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
All right, I'm willing to give it a shot. What about writing, though?
Yes.
We haven't really touched on that much yet.
They emphasize the importance of writing every day, even if it's just for a few minutes.
Okay.
They suggest keeping a daily journal in English.
Okay.
It's a great way to practice using different grammatical structures and to see how your writing evolves over time.
Makes sense. But for someone who struggles with grammar, wouldn't that be frustrating?
That's a common misconception.
Is it?
Yeah, they actually address that directly. They argue that learning grammar in context, rather than just memorizing rules in isolation, is far more effective.
Interesting.
Yeah, so instead of getting bogged down in grammar textbooks, they suggest observing how grammar is used in authentic English content.
Oh, so you mean like reading novels, watching movies, listening to conversations?
Exactly. Pay attention to how native speakers use grammar naturally, and you'll start to internalize those patterns without even realizing it.
It's like osmosis for grammar.
Yeah, kind of.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's be realistic, learning a language can be overwhelming.
It can be.
Especially if you're juggling work life, all the things. How do you stay motivated?
That's where setting small, achievable goals comes in.
Okay, but that's like classic advice, right?
It is, but it's especially important for language learning.
Why is that?
Because language learning is a long-term journey. It's easy to get discouraged if you're always focusing on how far you have to go.
Right.
So instead, break down your larger goal into smaller, more concrete steps.
Okay, so instead of saying, I want to be fluent in 6 months, I'd say something like, I'm going to learn 5 new words every day this week.
Exactly. Or, I'm going to watch 1 episode of my favorite show in English without subtitles tonight.
Oh, I see.
Small wins build momentum. They give you a sense of progress and keep you motivated to keep going.
So it's about celebrating those little victories to keep the momentum going.
Precisely. And that brings us to the final point the episode makes.
All right, lay it on me.
Be patient and have fun.
Oh, come on. Everyone says that.
I know.
What makes their approach to patience and fun different?
Well, they don't just tell you to have fun, they give you concrete ways to do it.
Okay.
They suggest incorporating activities you genuinely enjoy into your learning. So, singing English songs, playing word games, watching movies, connecting with other English speakers. It's about making English a part of your life, not just a subject to study.
Okay, so it's about finding that sweet spot where learning and enjoyment intersect.
Exactly.
But realistically, how do you maintain that balance, especially when the going gets tough?
That's where the emphasis on patience comes in. They remind you that language learning is a journey, not a sprint. Well, there will be ups and downs, moments of frustration, plateaus where you feel like you're not making progress. But the key is to stick with it, to celebrate the small wins, and to find joy in the process, even when it's challenging.
That's really powerful. It's about embracing the long game and finding those moments of joy to keep you fueled along the way.
Exactly. And we've only just scratched the surface of what this episode has to offer.
So there's more.
There's more. We still have some fascinating tips and insights to explore.
All right, well, hold on to your hats, folks, because we're going deeper into this English learning adventure in the next part of our deep dive.
You know, while we were talking about all these tips, one that really stood out to me was this idea of a vocabulary journal.
Yeah.
It's not just about, jotting down definitions. It's about actually using those words.
Right. They said to write full sentences using those new words, but honestly, doesn't that seem a little tedious?
I think it's less about being tedious and more about creating like a personal language laboratory.
Language laboratory.
Yeah, you're experimenting with these new words, seeing how they fit.
Yeah.
How they feel.
Yeah.
It's much more powerful than just memorizing a definition.
I can see that. It's like you're taking ownership of those words, making them a part of your own vocabulary.
Exactly.
But couldn't you achieve the same thing by just using them in conversations?
Speaking is crucial, of course.
Right.
But writing allows you to slow down.
Okay.
To really consider how you're using a word.
Right.
And plus, you can always go back and review your journal. Track your progress and see how your understanding of the language has deepened.
That's a good point. It's like a tangible record of your language journey.
Yeah.
Speaking of we talked about English speaking groups earlier.
Yes.
This episode seemed to really emphasize that.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for real life interaction.
Right.
It pushes you to think on your feet, to adapt to different accents and speaking styles.
Yeah.
That's where you really start to live the language.
Okay, but finding the right group can be tricky. What if you're shy or worried about making mistakes in front of others?
The episode offers some really reassuring advice. It's not about being perfect.
Okay.
It's about finding a supportive environment where you can practice and learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And the beauty is, there are so many options now.
Like what?
From local meetups to online communities, Facebook groups, things like that.
Yeah.
You can find a group that aligns with your interests and your comfort level.
So you don't have to jump into the deep end right away.
Exactly.
You can kind of ease your way in.
Find your people.
Find your people. Okay, that takes some of the pressure off.
Right.
But what about the actual mechanics of speaking?
Uh-huh.
How do you improve pronunciation, fluency, all that technical stuff?
Remember that shadowing technique we mentioned earlier?
The vocal doppelganger thing?
Yes, exactly. It's a game changer.
Oh, okay.
Imagine you're listening to a native speaker, and then you're trying to replicate their pronunciation, their rhythm, their intonation as closely as possible.
Right, right.
It's like you're becoming their voice.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful, but it also sounds a bit intimidating.
It can be.
Any tips for someone who's trying shadowing for the first time?
Yeah, start small. Choose a short audio clip, maybe a minute or two long.
Okay.
Listen carefully, paying attention to how the speaker is using their voice.
Okay.
Then pause the audio and try to repeat what you just heard, matching their intonation and pronunciation as accurately as you can.
So it's like a vocal workout.
Yes, exactly.
You're training your tongue and your ears to work together.
Precisely.
But wouldn't it be easier to just focus on the written word? Less pressure, maybe?
Writing is absolutely essential, and the episode actually dedicates a good chunk of time to it.
They do.
They suggest making writing a daily habit.
Okay.
Even if it's just for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Keep a journal. Write emails. Even just jot down your thoughts and observations, anything to get those words flowing.
So consistency is key.
Yes.
But what about grammar?
Uh-huh.
A lot of people get tripped up on the rules, the tenses, all that technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be better to master the grammar first before you try to write?
That's where this episode offers a really interesting perspective.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on memorizing grammar rules, they advocate for learning grammar in context.
In context?
Yes, so instead of cracking open a textbook, you would learn grammar by observing how it's used in real-life situations.
So you're saying read books, articles, blog posts, watch movies, TV shows, listen to podcasts.
Exactly. Pay attention to how native speakers use grammar naturally.
Okay.
And you'll start to internalize those patterns without even realizing it.
It's like osmosis for grammar.
Yeah, it's a much more organic approach.
That makes a lot of sense. But let's be realistic, learning a language can be overwhelming.
It can be.
Especially if you're juggling work life, all the things.
Right.
How do you stay motivated when it feels like such a huge mountain to climb?
That's where setting small, achievable goals comes in.
Okay, so we're back to that again.
We are, because it's important.
But why is it so important specifically for language learning?
Because language learning is a long-term game. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
It's easy to get discouraged if you're always focusing on how far you have to go.
Yeah, you'll just burn yourself out.
Exactly. So instead, you need to break down your larger goal into smaller, more manageable steps.
So instead of saying, I want to be fluent in 6 months, I'd say something like, I'm going to learn 5 new words every day this week.
Exactly. Or I'm going to watch 1 episode of my favorite show in English without subtitles tonight.
Okay, so it's about setting those smaller, more attainable goals.
Yes.
So that you can actually experience a sense of accomplishment along the way.
Precisely. Small wins build momentum. They give you that sense of progress and keep you motivated to keep going.
So it's all about those little victories.
It is.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about the emotional side of language learning? The frustration, the self-doubt, that feeling like you're not progressing fast enough?
That's where this episode's final point comes in. Be patient and have fun.
But everyone says that.
I know. But it's true.
What makes their approach to patience and fun different?
Well, they don't just say have fun.
Yeah.
They give you concrete ways to make it happen.
Okay, like what?
Remember how they talked about incorporating activities you genuinely enjoy into your learning?
Yeah, like music, movies, connecting with other people.
Exactly. It's about making English a part of your life, not just a subject to study.
Okay, so it's not just about reaching the destination, it's about enjoying the journey.
Yes.
But realistically, how do you find that balance between the hard work and the enjoyment?
It's about being mindful of your own learning style, your interests and your goals. Experiment with different techniques. Find what works for you, and don't be afraid to adjust your approach as you go along.
So you're basically creating a learning experience that's tailored to you.
Precisely.
I like that. But we're not quite done yet, are we?
We're not.
There's still more to uncover in this deep dive.
There is. We've explored a lot of valuable tips and insights, but there's still one crucial piece of the puzzle missing.
Oh, there is.
And that's what we'll be diving into in the final part of our deep dive.
So we've covered a ton of ground already: thinking in English, immersing yourself, the power of speaking and writing, even using tech and journals to your advantage. But it feels like there's one piece of the puzzle still missing.
I agree.
Yeah.
And it's actually the foundation for all those tips we've talked about.
Okay.
It's a mindset shift that this episode really emphasizes. It's something that underpins the whole language learning journey.
You're talking about that be patient and have fun thing, right?
Exactly.
They kept coming back to it.
Yeah.
But it's so much easier said than done.
It really is.
Like, how do you stay patient when you feel like you're hitting a wall? Or how do you have fun when you're just frustrated?
Well, the episode goes deeper than just saying have fun. It's about actively designing your learning experience so that it is enjoyable.
Right. Like they said, incorporate things you already love.
Exactly. Music, movies, connecting with people.
Make English part of your life, not just a chore on your to-do list.
Exactly.
Okay, but what about the patience part? How do you deal with those times when you inevitably start doubting yourself? You know, you feel like you're not progressing fast enough.
That's where the real wisdom of this episode comes in. They remind you that language learning, it's a journey, not a race. There are going to be plateaus times when it feels like you're not going anywhere. But those are the times when patience is your superpower.
So you got to accept those ups and downs as just part of the process.
Exactly. Trust that consistent effort will eventually pay off.
Easier said than done, though, right? Especially in a world where we're so used to instant gratification.
Oh, absolutely. The episode acknowledges that.
Yes.
And they encourage us to look at those struggles not as failures, but as opportunities to learn and grow. It's about celebrating those small wins, acknowledging how far you've come and finding joy in the process, even when it's tough.
That's powerful stuff. It's like having a growth mindset.
Yeah.
You embrace the journey and you find those little sparks of joy that keep you going.
Exactly. And that's what makes this episode so great. It goes beyond just giving you tips and techniques. It gives you the tools to create a personalized learning experience that's both effective and enjoyable. An experience that fits your learning style, your interests, your goals.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from all of this?
I want them to know that they are capable of reaching their English language goals.
Okay.
It won't always be easy. There will be challenges.
Right.
But by using these tips and shifting your mindset, by finding joy in the process and trusting yourself, you can unlock your full potential as an English speaker.
That is so inspiring. It reminds me that language learning, it's more than just memorizing words and grammar rules.
It is.
It's about self-discovery, connecting with the world around you, and realizing the incredible power of the human mind to learn and grow.
Well said.
So to everyone out there on their own English learning journey, keep going, keep exploring, and keep believing in yourself. You got this.